Mira stopped at the edge of the yard and stared at the abandoned home like it was staring back at her. The house looked tired and forgotten. The front steps leaned to one side. The windows were dusty, and one of them was cracked. Dry weeds grew high around the fence, and the gate hung open as if it had been waiting for someone to finally walk in. The sky was pale with late afternoon light, and the wind made a soft whistling sound through the broken boards. She held a small envelope in her hand. Inside it was the receipt for the purchase and the last few coins she had left. $900. That number repeated in her head like a warning and a prayer at the same time. She had risked everything on this place. It was not a smart decision in the way people like to talk about smart decisions. It was a decision made from fear, love, and a deep need to keep moving forward. Sam stood close to her left side, quiet but alert. He was 10, old enough to notice things even when adults tried to hide them. Lena stood on Myra's right, 7 years old, holding a small backpack with a stuffed rabbit tied to the zipper. Lena tried to look brave, but her fingers kept twisting the strap. Both kids watched Myra's face as if her expression could tell them what their future would look like. Mira took a slow breath and stepped onto the yard. The ground felt uneven under her shoes. The grass was patchy, and there were little stones everywhere. Sam looked toward the house and asked if this was really their new home. Mira did not answer right away. She did not want to lie. She also did not want to scare them. She finally said yes, and she said it with a calm tone she had practiced for months. The truth was that Mira had never imagined life would bring her here. A few years ago, she had a small apartment that was clean and bright. She had a routine. She had plans. She had a husband who promised they were a team. Then the team broke apart. The divorce was not loud and dramatic like in movies. It was slow, cold, and exhausting. Papers, meetings, tight conversations, and long nights where Mira stared at the ceiling and wondered how love could turn into distance. Money disappeared faster than she expected. A few emergency bills became many bills. A missed payment became a pile of notices. Her job hours were cut. The rent increased. She tried to keep smiling for the kids, tried to make breakfast feel normal, tried to keep their clothes clean and their school life steady. But worry lived in her shoulders, and it never fully left. When the landlord told her the lease would not be renewed, she felt the world tilt. She searched for places, but everything was too expensive. Friends gave polite sympathy and then changed the topic. Family members had their own problems. Some people even suggested Mira should send the kids to live elsewhere for a while. That idea hurt more than anything. She would rather sleep in her car than be separated from them. Then she saw the listing. An abandoned home sold cheap because it was considered a problem. Most people did not want problems. Mira did not want problems either, but she already had them. This was the only problem that came with a key. She reached the front door. The knob was cold. The lock was stiff, but it turned. The door opened with a rough sound, and stale air rolled out. The inside smelled like old wood, dust, and something faintly damp. Mira paused. She could feel her heartbeat in her throat. Sam and Lena leaned forward slightly behind her, trying to see inside. Mira stepped in first. The floor made a creak that sounded like a complaint. Sunlight entered through the windows in thin strips, showing dust floating in the air. The living room was mostly empty, but broken pieces of a chair lay near the wall. A curtain hung in one window, torn in the middle, moving gently with the breeze. There were marks on the walls where frames might have once hung. Lena whispered that it looked scary. Mira crouched beside her and said it looked old, not scary. She told Lena that old places could be fixed. She told Sam and Lena that they would clean it together, little by little. Mira did not add that she had no idea how she would pay for repairs. She focused on what she could do right now. She could open windows. She could sweep. She could make the space feel less like a shell. They moved from room to room. The hallway felt narrow. One door led to a bedroom with a cracked mirror still attached to the closet. Another room had a shelf full of empty jars. The bathroom sink was stained, and the faucet dripped slowly. Mira listened to the drip and felt it match the rhythm of her worry. In the kitchen, the light was a little brighter. The window over the sink faced the backyard, where a dead tree stood like a dark shape against the sky. The kitchen cabinets were worn, but intact. Mira opened one cabinet and found nothing but dust. She opened another and found a few old nails and a small broken cup. She could imagine someone standing here years ago, washing dishes, talking, living. Sam walked carefully along the floor and pointed at a section of wall behind the cabinets. The paint there looked different. It was cleaner, smoother, almost newer than the rest of the kitchen. Mira stepped closer and ran her fingers along it. The surface felt solid, and it did not have the same rough texture as the other walls. Mira stepped back and studied it. The cabinets in that corner looked slightly out of place too, like they had been moved and then put back. The screws were not the same as the others. Mira felt a small chill even though the room was warm. It was not a ghost feeling or anything strange like that. It was the feeling of noticing something that did not match the story around it. She told Sam not to touch it yet. Sam nodded but kept staring. Lena did not care about the wall. Lena cared about where they would sleep. She asked if her room could be the one with the window that faced the yard. Mira said yes. Lena smiled in a way that made Myra's chest tighten, because the smile was hopeful, and Mira was terrified of disappointing it. As the sun lowered, the house turned darker. Mira opened more windows and let air move through the rooms. They sat together on the living room floor with snacks from a plastic bag. The snack was simple, but Mira tried to make it feel like a picnic. Sam laughed once when Lena pretended the dust was glitter. Mira smiled, and for a moment she felt something soft return to her heart. Then the silence came back. The house creaked again. A distant dog barked outside. Mira looked around and wondered if she had done something impossible. She had no furniture, no tools, and no money left. She had only a roof that might leak and walls that needed work. She imagined her children waking up cold, and she felt guilt rise like a wave. Mira stood and walked back to the kitchen. The strange wall pulled her attention like a quiet magnet. She placed her palm on it again. It felt cool. She noticed faint lines near the edges, almost like a hidden panel had been sealed. Her mind began to race. She told herself it could be nothing. Maybe it was just repaired after water damage. Maybe the owner had patched something. Still, the feeling would not leave. She went back to Sam and Lena and told them it was time to sleep. They spread blankets on the floor. Mira placed the kids in the safest corner away from the windows. She sat awake longer than them, listening to the house settle into the night. Her thoughts moved from worry to planning. She would call the utility office in the morning. She would ask for help. She would search for local repair programs. She would do anything. When the kids finally drifted off, Mira looked toward the kitchen one more time. The faint light from the hallway made the cabinets and that smooth patch of wall stand out. Mira felt a strange mix of fear and curiosity. She did not know what was behind that wall, but she felt sure there was something. Something that mattered. Something that could change the story of this abandoned home, and maybe change the story of her family too. Mira closed her eyes and promised herself one thing. She would not let this house defeat her. Not after everything she had already survived. Morning arrived quietly inside the abandoned house. Pale light slipped through the dusty windows and landed on the floor like thin lines. Mira opened her eyes slowly, her body stiff from sleeping on the hard ground. For a moment she forgot where she was. Then the smell of old wood and dust reminded her. This was their new home. Or at least, it was supposed to be. She sat up and looked at Sam and Lena. Both children were still asleep, curled inside their blankets. Their faces looked peaceful, and that gave Mira strength. She stood carefully so she would not wake them and walked toward the kitchen. Her steps were soft, but the floor still made quiet sounds under her feet. The strange wall was the first thing she looked at. In the morning light, it looked even more different from the rest of the room. The paint was smoother, and the edges looked too straight. Mira placed her hand on it again. The surface felt firm and cool. Her heart beat faster, not from fear but from a strong sense of curiosity. Mira looked around the kitchen and pulled one of the cabinets slightly forward. It moved easier than she expected. Behind it, she saw a thin line running down the wall, like a hidden door that had been covered on purpose. Mira stepped back and took a deep breath. She told herself to stay calm. This house had been empty for years. There was no reason to panic. She went back to the living room just as Sam woke up. He rubbed his eyes and asked if it was morning. Mira smiled and said yes. Lena woke soon after and asked for breakfast. Mira laughed softly because breakfast meant dry bread and a shared apple. Still, she made it feel special. They sat together on the floor and ate slowly. After breakfast, Mira told the kids they would clean a little. Sam helped sweep the living room with an old broom they found in the corner. Lena wiped the window with her sleeve and pretended she was a helper in a big house. Mira watched them and felt a mix of pride and sadness. They were too young to carry so much change, yet they did it without complaint. When the kids were busy, Mira returned to the kitchen wall. She grabbed a small tool from her bag. It was just a basic screwdriver she had kept for emergencies. She carefully pressed it into the thin line near the edge of the wall. The sound was sharp and clear. The panel moved slightly. Mira froze. She listened for any strange noise. The house stayed quiet. Slowly, she pressed again, using more strength this time. The panel shifted, and a narrow opening appeared. A rush of cool air came through it, carrying a smell that was different from the rest of the house. It smelled clean and dry. Her hands shook as she widened the opening. Behind the wall was a small hidden space. It was not very deep, but it was wide enough to store things. Mira leaned closer and saw a wooden box sitting inside. The box was old but well kept. There was no dust on it, which surprised her. She pulled the box out carefully and placed it on the kitchen floor. It felt heavier than she expected. Her mind filled with questions. Who had put it there? Why had it been hidden? Was it important or just forgotten junk? Sam appeared in the doorway and asked what she found. Mira told him to come slowly and be careful. Lena followed him, her eyes bright with excitement. The three of them stood around the box like it was something special. Mira opened the lid gently. Inside were papers tied with string, a small cloth bag, and an envelope. Everything looked old but protected. Mira picked up the envelope first. Her name was not on it. Instead, it had a simple message written in neat handwriting. It said, "For the one who stays." Mira felt a chill run through her arms. She looked at the kids and smiled to keep them calm. She opened the envelope and pulled out a letter. The letter was long, written carefully, as if the writer wanted to be understood clearly. The letter explained that the house once belonged to an elderly man named Ron. He had lived there alone for many years after his family moved away. Ron knew the house was falling apart, and he knew he did not have much time left. He also knew that the house would be sold cheap and likely forgotten. Ron wrote that he hid something inside the wall for the person who would truly stay. Not someone who wanted to sell it again, but someone who needed it and would give the house life. He wrote about watching families pass by, about hoping the house would not be torn down. He believed that someday, someone would come who needed a second chance as much as the house did. Mira felt tears fill her eyes, but she held them back. She read the letter slowly, making sure every word stayed with her. At the end of the letter, Ron wrote that the box contained documents and savings he had collected over years. He wanted it used to repair the house and help a family build a future. Mira opened the cloth bag with careful hands. Inside were neatly stacked bills. She did not count them right away. She was afraid to breathe too hard, afraid this moment might disappear. Sam stared with wide eyes. Lena asked if it was treasure. Mira nodded slowly and said it was help. The papers in the box included old bank records, ownership notes, and instructions. Everything was clear and honest. Ron had planned this carefully. He trusted a stranger he would never meet more than a system that had failed him. Mira sat down on the kitchen floor, holding the letter against her chest. She cried quietly, not from sadness, but from relief. For the first time in months, the heavy pressure in her chest loosened. She felt seen, even though Ron was gone. Sam sat beside her and hugged her arm. Lena leaned into her other side. Mira told them that sometimes, kindness waits in hidden places. She told them that the house believed in them. That day, Mira cleaned the kitchen with new energy. She opened all the windows and let light fill the space. The house felt different now. Not fixed, but hopeful. Mira knew there would still be hard days. Repairs would take time. Life would not become perfect overnight. But she also knew something important. She had not made a mistake by trusting this place. The abandoned house had been waiting, just like she had. And together, they had found the beginning of a new story. The next morning felt different inside the house. The air seemed lighter, and even the quiet sounds felt less heavy. Mira woke up early again, but this time her body did not feel as tired. She sat up and looked around. The walls were still old. The floor still creaked. Nothing had magically changed overnight. Yet something inside her had shifted. She stood and walked to the kitchen where the wooden box now sat on the counter. She touched it gently, almost like it might disappear if she was not careful. The letter from Ron was folded neatly beside it. Mira read it once more, slowly, as if the words could guide her steps. Ron had trusted her without knowing her. That trust felt big and serious. Sam woke up soon after and joined her. He asked what would happen next. Mira told him they would start fixing things, one step at a time. She said they would be careful and smart. Sam nodded like he understood more than his age showed. Lena woke later and ran into the kitchen, already talking about painting her room one day. After breakfast, Mira made a simple plan. She would first make the house safe. Then she would make it comfortable. She spread the papers from the box across the table. There were notes about repairs, a list of local workers Ron trusted, and clear instructions on how to use the money wisely. Mira felt like someone was guiding her hand. She decided to visit the small town office that afternoon. Before leaving, she locked the box back inside the hidden space and moved the cabinet carefully into place. She was not ready for anyone else to know yet. Some things needed time. The walk into town was quiet. The road was long, and the houses nearby looked well kept. People passed Mira and the kids with polite nods. Some faces showed curiosity. Others showed doubt. Mira kept her head high. She had done that walk before with fear in her chest. This time, she walked with purpose. At the town office, Mira spoke with a woman named Helen. Helen had kind eyes and a calm voice. Mira explained she had bought the abandoned house and wanted to repair it. Helen raised her eyebrows at first, but then listened carefully. When Mira mentioned Ron, Helen softened. She said many people remembered him as quiet but thoughtful. Helen helped Mira fill out forms and explained local support programs. She also told Mira about a community repair group that helped families in need. Mira thanked her again and again. Each small help felt like another door opening. On the way back, Sam asked why people were being nice all of a sudden. Mira smiled and said sometimes people notice effort before they notice success. Lena skipped ahead, pretending the cracked sidewalk was a game path. Back at the house, Mira decided to start with cleaning the yard. The weeds were high, and the fence leaned badly. Sam helped pull weeds, and Lena gathered stones into small piles. The work was slow, but it felt good. Sweat mixed with laughter. The house seemed to watch them quietly, like it approved. Later that afternoon, a truck stopped near the fence. A man stepped out and looked toward the house. He introduced himself as Mark. He said he lived nearby and had seen them working. He offered to help fix the fence later in the week. Mira hesitated at first but then accepted. She thanked him and felt another small weight lift. Inside, Mira focused on the kitchen repairs. She tightened loose cabinet screws and cleaned the sink until it shined a little. She taped a note to the wall listing tasks. Fix leak. Check roof. Clean rooms. Each task looked big alone, but together they felt manageable. That evening, Mira opened the cloth bag again and counted the money carefully. It was enough to make real changes but not enough to waste. She planned every step with care. She felt proud of herself for staying calm and focused. She was no longer acting from fear alone. That night, the kids slept faster. Mira sat near the window, listening to the wind move through the yard. She thought about Ron and wondered what kind of life he had lived. She hoped he would be happy knowing his house was alive again. The next few days passed with steady progress. A plumber came and fixed the leaking sink. A roofer inspected the roof and patched the worst areas. Each visit made the house feel stronger. Sam helped by handing tools and asking questions. Lena drew pictures of what the rooms would look like one day. Neighbors began to notice. Some waved. Some stopped to talk. Mira did not rush friendships, but she welcomed kindness. She learned that the house had a bad reputation before. People thought it was cursed by bad luck. Mira smiled at that idea. Luck was not something she waited for anymore. It was something she worked toward. One afternoon, Mira found another envelope hidden under a loose floorboard in the hallway. This one did not hold money. It held a short note from Ron. It said that rebuilding a home also rebuilds a person. Mira held the note for a long time before placing it beside the first letter. The kids asked if the house would ever feel like home. Mira told them it already was. Home was not perfect walls or new paint. Home was effort, safety, and hope. The kids accepted that answer easily. As the sun set behind the trees, Mira stood in the yard and looked at the house. It still needed work. It always would. But it stood taller now, just like she did. The abandoned home was no longer abandoned. It had voices, plans, and a future. Mira did not know everything that awaited her family. She knew there would still be challenges. But she also knew one thing clearly. Taking that risk with her last $900 had opened a door she never expected. And she was ready to walk through whatever came next. Weeks passed, and the house slowly began to change its face. The broken fence was straight again. The weeds were gone, replaced by open ground where Lena liked to sit and draw shapes in the dirt. The roof no longer leaked during the night. The kitchen sink worked without a single drip. None of it happened fast, but every small fix made the house breathe easier. Mira woke each day before sunrise. She made simple meals, packed water bottles, and planned tasks in her head. Some days she felt strong. Other days the weight returned to her chest without warning. She allowed herself those moments but never let them stop her. She had learned that fear lost power when faced directly. Sam had started school again. The walk was longer than before, but he did not complain. He liked telling his classmates about the house and how it used to be empty. Some kids laughed. Some listened with interest. Sam learned quickly that not everyone understood rebuilding. That lesson made him quieter but also more thoughtful. Lena stayed home with Mira during the mornings. She helped by holding tools, sweeping floors, and singing made-up songs about fixing houses. Her laughter filled rooms that once held only silence. Mira often paused just to listen. Those sounds were proof that the risk had been worth it. One afternoon, Mira received a letter from the town office. It explained that the house had old unpaid taxes from years ago. The amount was not huge, but it was enough to shake her calm. Mira sat at the table and read the letter twice. The room felt smaller again. Fear tried to return, quick and sharp. She folded the letter carefully and took a deep breath. Panic would not help. She remembered Ron's note about rebuilding a person. This was part of it. Mira walked to the hidden space and checked the box. There was enough left to cover the taxes, but it would slow other repairs. She did the math again and again, choosing the path that protected the house. The next day, she went back to the town office. Helen greeted her with the same calm smile. Mira explained the situation honestly. Helen listened and then nodded. She said the town had a payment plan option. It would allow Mira to pay slowly without pressure. Mira felt relief move through her body like warm water. That same week, Mark returned to help with the fence as promised. He brought his teenage son along. They worked together quietly, fixing loose boards and reinforcing weak spots. Mira offered water and simple snacks. Mark spoke about the house and said he was glad someone had finally cared enough to stay. Word spread faster than Mira expected. One neighbor offered old paint that was still good. Another dropped off extra tools. None of it felt like charity. It felt like shared effort. Mira learned to accept help without shame. That alone was a new skill. Inside the house, Mira started working on the hallway floor. Some boards were loose, others cracked. While lifting one section, she noticed markings underneath. They were faint scratches, almost like symbols, carved long ago. They did not scare her. They made her curious. She wondered how many lives had passed through this space before hers. That night, Mira dreamed of Ron standing in the yard, smiling quietly. He did not speak. He only nodded, as if to say she was doing fine. Mira woke with wet eyes but a steady heart. Sam began helping more after school. He learned how to sand wood and hold nails steady. Mira watched him grow more confident with each task. She saw how responsibility shaped him, not in a heavy way, but in a way that gave him pride. Lena claimed her room fully now. She taped drawings to the walls and talked about where her bed would go once they found one. Mira listened and saved those ideas in her mind. She wanted to give Lena a space that felt safe and bright. One evening, as Mira cleaned the living room, she found an old photo tucked behind a beam. It showed the house many years ago, freshly painted, with a family standing on the porch. A man who looked like Ron stood at the edge, younger and stronger. Mira held the photo gently. It reminded her that this house had already survived loss before. Survival was built into its bones. The next challenge came when the weather turned harsh. Strong wind rattled the windows. Rain fell hard against the roof. Mira stayed awake, listening for leaks. When none came, she smiled into the darkness. The house was holding on. After the storm, the yard was messy again. Branches lay scattered. Mira and the kids cleaned together. Their hands were cold, but their laughter was warm. Mira noticed how neighbors watched from their windows. This time, the looks were different. There was respect in them. Later that day, a man from a local repair group arrived. Helen had sent him. He inspected the house and praised the progress. He offered help with the remaining big repairs. Mira felt her throat tighten. She thanked him and agreed. That night, the family ate dinner on the floor again, but it felt different from the first night. There was light, warmth, and a sense of belonging. Mira told the kids that life might still test them. She did not promise ease. She promised effort and honesty. Before sleep, Mira walked through each room slowly. She touched the walls, the door frames, the window sills. Each surface held a story now, including hers. She paused at the kitchen wall where it had all begun. She whispered a quiet thank you, not just to Ron, but to herself. The house no longer felt like a risk. It felt like a partner. It pushed back when needed and stood strong when tested. Mira understood that rebuilding never truly ends. It becomes a way of living. As she lay down beside her children, Mira felt something she had not felt in a long time. Peace that did not depend on perfection. Peace built from choice, effort, and hope. And she knew that the final shape of their future was still forming, just like the house itself. The house stood quietly in the early morning light, no longer looking forgotten. Fresh paint covered the worst marks on the walls. The fence held steady. The yard showed signs of care. Mira stepped outside with a cup of warm tea and looked at everything with calm eyes. She did not feel rushed anymore. Time had slowed in a good way. It had been months since the first night they slept on the floor. Now, the rooms held simple furniture given by neighbors and friends. Nothing matched, but everything worked. Sam had a small desk near the window where he did his homework. Lena had a bed with a colorful blanket and drawings on the wall just like she imagined. Mira slept better knowing her children felt safe. The town slowly accepted the house as part of the neighborhood again. People waved when Mira walked by. Some stopped to talk. The house was no longer known as abandoned. It was known as lived in. That mattered more than Mira ever expected. One afternoon, Mira received another letter from the town office. This one was different. It informed her that the house had been approved for a small community repair grant because of her effort and commitment. Mira read the letter twice to make sure it was real. She sat down and let out a long breath. Help had arrived again, right when it was needed. She shared the news with Sam and Lena that evening. Sam smiled with quiet pride. Lena clapped and said the house liked them. Mira laughed and agreed. She believed that too. With the grant, Mira fixed the last major issues. The hallway floor became solid. The front steps were repaired. The house felt complete, not perfect, but strong. Mira learned how to do small repairs herself. Each skill made her more confident. Each fix reminded her how far she had come. One weekend, Mira invited the neighbors who had helped along the way. It was not a big gathering. Just simple food and shared stories in the yard. Mark came with his son. Helen stopped by briefly. Others brought chairs or drinks. Laughter filled the space. Mira stood back for a moment and watched. This was something she never planned, yet it felt right. During the gathering, Sam spoke to a neighbor about the hidden wall. He explained how his mom had found the box and how it saved them. The neighbor listened quietly and nodded. He said sometimes the right things are hidden until the right people arrive. Mira overheard and smiled. Later that night, after everyone left, Mira cleaned the yard with the kids. The moon was bright. The house glowed softly under its light. Mira felt tired in a good way. She walked inside and stopped in the kitchen. The wall looked normal now. The cabinet stayed in place. The hidden space remained sealed. Mira did not feel the need to open it again. It had already given what it needed to give. She took out Ron's letters and placed them carefully in a small box on a shelf. She wanted to keep them safe, not hidden. They were part of the house now, just like her family. Days turned into steady routines. Sam focused on school and talked about what he wanted to be someday. Lena played in the yard and made friends nearby. Mira found part-time work in town and saved slowly. Life was still simple, but it was stable. One evening, a storm rolled in suddenly. Thunder echoed. Rain fell hard. Mira sat by the window and listened. She did not feel fear like before. The roof held strong. The walls did not shake. The house stood firm, just like she had learned to do. After the storm passed, Mira stepped outside. The air smelled clean. The ground was wet but calm. She felt grateful for every hard choice that led her here. Risk had not broken her. It had shaped her. Sam came outside and stood beside her. He said the house felt like it belonged to them now. Mira placed a hand on his shoulder and said it always did. They just had to believe it. Lena ran out and hugged both of them. She said she never wanted to leave. Mira smiled and said they did not have to. That night, Mira sat alone for a while after the kids slept. She thought about the past year. The fear. The doubt. The $900 that felt like a gamble. She realized it was not luck that saved her. It was courage mixed with effort and kindness from unexpected places. Mira wrote a short note and placed it inside the hidden space behind the wall. The note was simple. It said that the house was loved and alive. It said thank you. She sealed the space again, smiling softly. As she lay down, Mira felt peace settle over her. Not the kind that comes from having everything, but the kind that comes from surviving and building something real. The abandoned home had changed her life, but she had changed it too. Together, they proved that broken things can become strong again when someone chooses to stay and care. The story did not end with perfection. It ended with hope, steady and true, living quietly inside a house that was finally home.